Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today 'tis the season for injuries and firings and basically the NHL being on fire at the moment. Oh, at least for some of your favorite teams or least favorite teams. But we got to dive into this. We got to catch up on not only 1 week, but 2 weeks of NHL action. Guys, thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports. Make sure that you follow us down below, youtube.com/I-80 Sports. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so that way you guys know when our videos go live. And hit up the comment section down below and let us know what you think of all the recent going-ons in the NHL over the last 2 weeks. We weren't around last week. It was a bit of a busy week for both of us last week. So we're hitting it back with 2 weeks worth of information this week in lead up to the holiday season. While you're down in the comment section below, also please make sure that you hit the like button if you like what we are putting out there. If you're still currently on X and don't currently follow us, make sure you follow us down below at I-80_sports NHL. And if you guys follow us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. I'm Brian. Direction still. He's Tom. Tom, how you doing today?
Doing well. And here we are. We did take a week off, but a lot's been going on around the league. Getting into the middle of the season, getting into panic time for some teams, getting into really just panic time for some teams right now. As far as looking to improve and the like, I think you won't be seeing major trade rumors happen for probably another month to 6 weeks. But right now, the teams that are kind of teetering on the brink are trying to save their seasons by making some moves. So let's just get right to it.
And diving in, we shall. So we're going to talk some news first before we dive into the injury report, which there's a lot to catch up on with the injury report. Hence why I even titled this episode, "'Tis the Season to be Injured," because it's kind of true at the moment. A lot of things going on. So let's dive in. Time to hit up the traffic report.
The I-80 Sports Traffic Report, where you can find all your news and notes from the week.
Or in this case, your news and notes of the last 2 weeks, because there has been a little bit of going on in the NHL. We're going to start up right here, just kind of trying to play catch up in no particular order whatsoever. Starting off right off the top, the Washington Capitals, as well as the Washington Wizards and the NBA side of things, the group that owns the team is currently looking at a potential relocation project that would see the Washington Capitals and the Washington Wizards move to a new stadium in Northern Virginia, potentially by the year 2028. Now, there's no definitives yet. There's no traction yet on the move and getting a proper location, and it still needs to be league approved both in the NHL and the NBA. But Tom, I'll let you get started right off the top here. What do you think of this potential move for the Washington Capitals overall? What impact does this have potentially on the NHL?
I don't know if it has an impact potentially on the NHL per se. I don't really think it's going to do anything for the league regardless. As far as the Caps are concerned, I just don't understand why they want to do it. The arena they're in now, Capital One Arena, it's not that old. It's only about 25 years old. It's in downtown DC, still fairly new. It seems to be a trend lately, though, that all these stadiums and arenas that were built in the mid to late 90s, people are looking to get away from. And I don't know why. I guess maybe it's the cookie cutter shape of the arena and they want to have their own unique area. I don't know. It's right there in downtown DC. Public transportation accessible, similar to kind of like what Madison Square Garden and Prudential Center are in this area. The only thing I could think of is parking being an issue, but I looked at where they want to put this. They want to put it right there in Alexandria, Virginia, which is right across the river from DC. Where they want to do it, it's still, I mean, parking still isn't going to be great. You're still probably going to have to get there by taking the DC Metro into there. Really, the only thing it would do is it would be maybe a first ever in DC sports history. Until recently, most of the teams in DC were playing in Maryland, outside of DC United, which was playing at RFK Stadium, which was let's not get into that. That's for our MLS guys. I've been there before. It was not a good experience the few times I've been there. Regardless, though, up until that arena was built in Washington, D.C. for the Caps in 1997, the majority of your Washington-based sports teams would play their home games in suburban Maryland. Still fairly close to D.C., but a little more of a suburban. You get off the interstate and go to the game. This would probably be a first for any D.C. team to be calling Virginia home. And Alexandria is just basically all it is just it's like a Western DC. It's just a extension of Washington DC. But I don't really know what to think about this. And at the same time, the Virginia government is potentially trying to block this. There's a couple things that they don't like about it. So we got to see what happens here. It's going to be very interesting to see. And like I said before, that arena is only 25 years old. I don't understand what the reason to move out of it is.
And it does seem to be the common trend lately. I mean, we have seen it as recently with the Calgary Flames and with the move out of the Saddle Dome for the Calgary Flames.
They haven't moved out of it yet, though.
No, they haven't moved out of it yet, but at least the wheels have been put in place for a new stadium in Calgary.
Different there, though. That's
an older barn. I know that. It's an older barn, Saddle Dome. Don't quote me in terms of years, but it's at least dating back to the 70s or 80s, correct?
I'm going to say the 80s. I think they did open it for the 88 Calgary Olympics, but in the 80s, the arena building philosophies in the 80s were not the same as they were in the 90s in terms of luxury boxes, suites, and the like.
And ultimately, that could be the play here for the Washington Capitals, too. I mean, when you really come down to the root of things, you had these different arenas that were built in the mid-90s and early 2000s that really weren't equipped for higher end seating, and it's tougher to upgrade later on in a lot of cases, or at least do it seamlessly. So that could at least be the play that the group that owns the Washington Capitals could be trying to play at and moving to Northern Virginia. It could also just be that is just the most convenient area with the most open amount of space to go and put a new stadium. Maybe they can't necessarily, track down a particular place to build a new stadium in Washington, D.C., which is why they're looking northern in Virginia. As far as what impact it's going to have on the NHL, it's left to be seen. This is still very much in its early phases. This is still an ever-developing story. And this is going to be something that we're probably going to be tracking at least over not even just the next few months, but maybe even the next few years as we start to gain more traction on this story. Ultimately, I could at least see where the group in Washington could want to move to Northern Virginia for location purposes, for parking purposes, and for upgrading of overall viewing experience for the fan and a revenue boom for that group in particular. And it could also potentially lead to a revenue boom for the NHL as well. People making money in the NHL ultimately makes more money for the NHL. So I could honestly see why this group in Washington would want to do that. But ever-developing story, will track this as long as it goes and see if the Washington Capitals actually do move out of Washington, D.C. But we're not going to call them the Virginia Capitals. That would just be strange.
They'll still be Washington. I mean, they're going to be right there.
Exactly. It's going to be one of those situations where it's just like they're going to be known as the Washington Capitals, but they're not going to play like in Washington, D.C. It's kind of like how we refer to the New York Giants and the New York Jets as the New York Giants and New York Jets, and not the East Rutherford Jets or East Rutherford.
Yeah, like I had mentioned before, though, up until from their inception in 1973 up until 1997, they played their home games in Landover, Maryland at the old USA Arena / Capital Center.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was really in the middle of nowhere. This is actually going to be in the middle of stuff.
Precisely. Moving right along here, we had some news that came out actually today, this morning. We're recording this right now on December 20th. So whenever this video comes out, this is news that actually dropped today. Former number 2 overall pick from the 2017 NHL draft, Nolan Patrick, has announced his retirement from the NHL following multiple concussions along his NHL journey. He suffered a total of, at least that were diagnosed, 4 separate concussions across his NHL career. And I mean, Tom, instant reactions here. This is an upsetting story. This is a sad story.
It is a sad story. He was a highly touted prospect in that 17 draft, went number 2 overall. I even remember Jeff Gorton was the GM of the Rangers at the time, was trying to trade up for him, and a bunch of other guys. And, he was really looked upon to be a star in this league. He had the size, he could score goals, he could do a lot of things. He played in the old not the old WHL, he played in the WHL, which is one of the toughest junior leagues to play in. It is sad. He was looked at as a huge part of the Philadelphia Flyers' future at the time. He was drafted number 2 overall by the Flyers. Just didn't work out there. And basically since then, it didn't work. He said, in 2019, he had started getting post-concussion syndrome while he was training off the ice. Tried to play again with the Flyers, tried to make it work again, didn't work out. Went to Vegas, tried to make it work there. But the thing was, it never worked out there. Was never able to crack the lineup. Was not included on the engraving for the 2023 championship roster. Sad ending to a career that was expected to be a lot more. It was a 100-point guy in juniors, and it's just sad that it did end this way. But at the end of the day, if you keep going, you could hurt yourself even worse. So I think he probably made the right decision to retire. And good luck to him in whatever he does.
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, I would say congratulations on retirement in most cases, but it's tough to congratulate this one because at 25 years old, he still had so much more time to play in the NHL, barring the rest of these injuries, barring a comeback. And it's upsetting. It really stinks to see. I remember watching his highlights when he was playing with the Brandon Wheat Kings in the WHL and just thinking, wow, this kid's pretty special. This kid's going to be a decent NHLer. Could be a top line center, could be a second line center with some major offensive firepower. And it just never worked out in Philadelphia. His development in Philadelphia got stunted. Alain Vigneault, when coaching in Philadelphia, I don't think really did him a lot of favors, as well as the training staff and the coaching staff there. Moving over to Vegas, I thought it was going to be a good change of scenery for Nolan Patrick. Maybe finally get things clicking, things going, and bang, just dealt with post-concussion syndrome, and it was just never the same. Nolan Patrick finishes his career with 222 games played, 32 goals, 45 assists, 77 points total as an NHL player. And yeah, I can't help but think of what could have been for Nolan Patrick, especially if he had really started to hit his stride with the Philadelphia Flyers, and maybe see where the Philadelphia Flyers would even be by now if Nolan Patrick was still in that lineup for sure. As a Devils fan, I remember a lot of Devils fans were slightly upset in 2017 when they drafted Nico Hischier over Nolan Patrick, because Nolan Patrick was the more talented player in that draft. In hindsight, it turned out to be pretty sweet for the Devils, sticking with Nico Hischier. Nico Hischier, it's looking like one of the best picks from that draft in the top 10. But more importantly for Nolan Patrick, I hope that he finds solace, after retirement. I hope he does, maybe stay involved in hockey, in, Canada hockey, or developmental, or, maybe hooks on with another team as, some kind of an advisory role, or, maybe just sticks around the NHL. And if it doesn't stick around the NHL, or doesn't stick around hockey in general, I hope he finds something that he loves to do, because losing your career at this young age, it's never easy, and it's never a fun topic of discussion. So good luck in retirement, Nolan Patrick. And yeah, we'll always think of what could have been. Moving right along, we had a minor trade occur earlier this week where the Colorado Avalanche traded Tomas Tatar to the Seattle Kraken for a 2024 fifth-round pick. Tom, decent pickup for the Seattle Kraken. How do you think this affects their top 9?
Well, let me start with the Colorado side first. He was brought in there for depth and experience, and I guess it just didn't work out. His stat line in Colorado was 1 goal, 8 assists, 9 points, which is, for somebody like that, still not good enough. It should have been maybe a little bit better. For Seattle, it does upgrade. I think it does upgrade it. I'm just trying to pull the line combos up here, and daily faceoff is just giving me an extremely hard time right now.
I will say, on the devil's advocate side of things, while you're pulling up the daily face-off lines for the Seattle Kraken, in Colorado, I mean, 1 goal, 8 assists for 9 points in that span of time. Yeah, a lot of people will look at that, especially for a guy of the talent level of Tomas Tatar, and say, wow, really didn't live up to expectation. But I think one thing that needs to be kept in mind with his game over the last quarter of the season with the Colorado Avalanche, he was never playing top 6 minutes. He was always playing third line or fourth line minutes on a really deep team. He was never brought in to be the surefire goal scorer, 5-on-5 guy that he is. He was really more so brought into a depth role. He was brought in to be a player that could be a bit of a Swiss Army knife, come in and play third or fourth line minutes in limited roles, maybe see a little bit of power play action or penalty kill action. And because of that, you saw his minutes kind of plummet from the norm for him because of that. So 1 goal and 8 assists, it's not an awful start for a third or fourth line guy. So that's just my devil's advocate. What do you think, Tom?
No, I hear you. He actually is going to get first line minutes in Seattle, which I guess is good for him. I don't know what he was wanting career-wise right now. Was he wanting to win a Stanley Cup? Because winning a Stanley Cup would have been more possible with Colorado than would with Seattle. Right now, the way you look at things, Seattle's in the Pacific Division, and that top 3 right now consists of the Vegas Golden Knights, Vancouver Canucks, and LA Kings. Don't think that's going to change all too much. You have the Edmonton Oilers, who have put up a couple bad performances as of late, yes. They've lost 3 in a row, but I still think the Oilers are going to rise up there too. So right now, Seattle, their best case scenario here is to maybe sneak into that last wild card spot. So it'll allow them some more playing time, but I don't know if it's going to allow them a chance to go deep in the playoffs, because I just don't see Seattle having a miracle year like they did last year. The other side of what Colorado was, and what most experts are saying, is that getting rid of him is opening up more cap space for them to make a bigger move. Bigger move for who? Bigger move for what? I don't know. I thought Ryan Johansson would have been fine with them this year for that second line center spot, but they're apparently wanting to upgrade from him as well and maybe drop him down to the third line with whomever they can get. I don't know who out there may be available for them. But right now, all the rumblings are saying that Colorado made this deal in order to make a bigger deal later on. Johansson's stat line right now, 10 goals, 2 assists, 12 points in 32 games. That's okay. But I think they're looking for something more along the lines of the performance that Nazem Kadri put up in the Stanley Cup winning year 2 years ago. And you never know. Maybe that's what they're looking to do if if Calgary keeps trending off. Maybe they're looking to go knocking on Calgary's doors and saying, hey, let's figure something out and get him back here. He was a key cog in their Stanley Cup winning team 2 years ago. So you never know. But that's what I think was the onus for the trade. I think maybe Tatar potentially wanted more playing time, and the Avs were looking to make a bigger acquisition as the season goes on to fill that second line center spot, which has been a glaring weakness of theirs since they won that aforementioned Stanley Cup.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think this is a good pickup for Seattle. Seattle is really trying to climb out of the bottom of the Pacific Division right now, which is, really starting to run away with the Vegas Golden Knights, Vancouver Canucks, and LA Kings as of late. I gotta say, I think Edmonton should be a little bit concerned at the moment, not really gaining traction. But that's besides the point. We're talking about the Seattle Kraken here and picking up Tomas Tatar. Like Tom mentioned, according to Daily Faceoff, he is going to be getting some top line minutes. So maybe this could provide the spark that Seattle needs to start trying to pick up some leverage within the division and try to make some waves, trying to climb back into a weaker Pacific Division. So could we see Seattle really kind of start picking things up? Could this be kind of a catalyst move for the rise of this team? It could be. Tomas Tatar is still a talented player, and there's a reason why he held out for a little while to see if he could, land himself on a team that could give him top 6 minutes. Couldn't get that ultimately with the New Jersey Devils in the offseason. Went to the Colorado Avalanche instead, and the Avalanche decided, you know what? We're going to free up some cap space and move on and move him over to Seattle. Maybe this is a sign of something other to come for the Colorado Avalanche, or maybe this just gives them flexibility as the season grows on. As Tom mentioned at the top of the show, we're still about 4 to 6 weeks away from any new major moves that could be happening in lead up to the NHL trade deadline at the end of February. So, with all that being said, this could be a setup move for the Colorado Avalanche to maybe make a move later down the road as we get closer to the NHL trade deadline and they already assess, you know what, Tomas Tatar, he's not in our future plans, but he could be in the future plans of Seattle Kraken. So we'll see how Tomas Tatar's stats develop over the course of the year with Seattle Kraken. I'll be really interested to see, now that he's getting top line minutes, where he ends up after this. I'll be curious to check those stats come mid-season. We've got some firings to announce here. We had a couple coaching firings during this weekend last week, starting with the most recent firing. The Ottawa Senators have fired DJ Smith as their head coach. And then earlier before that, the St. Louis Blues fired Craig Berube, which I get was a move that needed to happen, but I can't still help but feel like you give a coach with that pedigree the entire season and then you move on after the season. I know that you're trying to get a season back and trying to pick up some time in the Central Division, but I don't know. Tom, I'm going to state my case here. I think the Ottawa Senators firing of DJ Smith came too late, and I think the St. Louis Blues firing of Craig Berube came too soon. Do you agree or disagree?
As far as DJ Smith is concerned, I think it was. I don't know if it was too late, but you're getting to a point right now where a team with that personnel is grossly underperforming. Something needed to be done. They were expected to take the next step forward last year. They didn't do it. They were expected to do it this year. Early on, it looked like they would. Now they sit in last place in the East and will be sellers at the deadline unless something turns around. So as far as DJ Smith is concerned, I think they gave him as much road as they could, but at the same time, it didn't work. So you know what? At the end of the day, you got to pull the plug. You have good young players, Tim Stutzla, Brady Tkachuk, older veterans, Claude Giroux, Vladimir Tarasenko. At the end of the day, if that's not working, it's the coach that's got to let go. As we move on to St. Louis, I don't know what Berube. I think the footsteps with Craig, as much as Craig Berube and Doug Armstrong are buddy, Craig Berube did something that no other coach ever in St. Louis history did. Won the Stanley Cup. The footsteps about him, man, we were hearing them footsteps for years. As much as Vladimir Tarasenko, who I just mentioned, didn't want to say it, Tarasenko had said as early as 2 years ago he wanted out of St. Louis. I got a funny feeling why he wanted out of St. Louis. Why do you think he said to them last year at the deadline? He stayed in St. Louis 2 years ago only because they made the playoffs, and they didn't trade him, and that's why. I think that's what they told him. Why do you think Tarasenko went to the Blues last year, which was my theory, and said, listen, you better get rid of me because I'm not coming back here in the summertime? Why do you think? Why do you think those shady comments made by Jordan Kyrou, who is one of the team's best players right now, were looked on with some not so great responses? I think that Berube won that cup there, and I think that the players who played for him there were grateful for that cup. But I got a funny feeling like that had happened in L.A. I think it was a Daryl Sutter kind of effect. I think it had gotten to a point where the players had just had enough of him. And as much as the fans loved him, and as much as Armstrong loved him, I got a funny feeling that some of the veterans in that room, some of the better players in that room, a la Jordan Kyrou, went there and said, hey, listen, you keep this guy around as long as you want. But you want to know what? You keep him around, then you better trade me. And it gets to a point where this isn't a coach's league anymore. You don't see the Scotty Bowmans anymore who can just stay somewhere. And you don't really see it. You don't really see it that way anywhere where somebody stays somewhere for years upon years upon years anymore, like you had with Toe Blake with the Montreal Canadiens way back when, or Punch Imlach with the Toronto Maple Leafs way back when, or even Harry Sinden running the show in Boston way back when. You don't see that anymore. You know, coaches and GMs are recycled in this league fairly quickly nowadays. And I got a funny feeling that Armstrong, had his backs against the wall saying, you know what, my best players are telling me they won't play for this guy anymore. I want to keep who I have. The team was playing okay. bubble team this year, just on the outside looking in, I just got a feeling they finally went and said, you know what? I got to pull the plug. And sometimes it's the hardest thing for GMs to do. Neil Smith said when he was running the Rangers, the hardest thing he ever had to do was fire Roger Nielsen, who he was very close with. They fired Roger Nielsen and wound up winning a cup with Mike Keenan. That's a story for a different day. But I'm sure Armstrong hated to do it. But at the end of the day, the players spoke. The players probably spoke and said, we're not going to play for this guy anymore. So do something.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from. I mean, thinking in my head, probably the longest tenure coach in the NHL at the moment, I believe, is Mike Sullivan for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think his contract dates back to 2016, if I'm not mistaken. So a good 6 or 7 year tenure so far for him. But that being said, I mean, yeah, you get to a point in any coaching position, whether it's the NHL, NBA, MLB, NFL, where a voice wears off after a while. You get desensitized by hearing the same voice over and over and over and over again. And it's to the point where the motivation just doesn't land anymore. And it happens with the best of coaches these days. You have players that develop and grow over time and need a different voice after a while. The best of teams still need a few cooks in the kitchen after a while. And my firm belief with Craig Berube in St. Louis was I still feel like it was too soon for this season to fire him. However, if you were already planning on moving on from him and there was potential disdain for him coming into this season, that's something that should have been addressed during the offseason. It should have been something that was addressed. It should have been a decision that was made at the end of last season. Just said, with everything going on, with everything that has gone on with Vladimir Tarasenko and the departures of the majority of the Stanley Cup team, plus we have some grievances that were aired by other players, maybe it's time to move on at that point. I think doing it mid-season for a guy like Craig Berube, with his talent level of a coach and with his experience and pedigree, I still can't help but feel like it's too soon for St. Louis to move on. I understand it's still too soon. I think, and this is going to be a hot take, Jordan Kyrou is a bit of a soft player who, is sick of hearing the criticism, who's sick of having somebody who's on him to motivate and try to get the absolute best out of him. And his comments that came off as rather petty and rude after immediately following Craig Berube's firing in St. Louis, I think there's a very big reason why Jordan Kyrou was fired the night after Craig Berube was fired, and why Jordan Kyrou had to literally cry to the media, saying, well, you don't understand and this and that. I don't know. It's not a good look.
Yeah, but look at it this way too. This was a team that had Mike Keenan in 1996, who ripped into Wayne Gretzky, and Gretzky said, "Fine, I'm out of here. Bye."
Yeah, and you're not wrong. I mean, then again, you're not wrong. But Mike Keenan was also a historic bit of a jerk.
The player who ripped in a franchise legend, Brett Hull. Hull, who used to just tell him to go screw himself all the time.
I mean, then again, Hully did that with a few coaches. He did it to him, did it to Ken Hitchcock.
No, he said he got along with Hitchcock. Hitchcock used to rip into him. He said that he hated the way he said he hated Mike Keenan as a person. He said with Hitchcock, he had no problem with him as a person. He hated the way he coached. He hated the way they had him play. He said Scotty Bowman, he said he loved the way Scotty Bowman coached. And he used to go sit in Scotty Bowman's office in his boxers in his desk chair.
Yeah,
when he was
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. For Ottawa, though, in the firing of DJ Smith, it needed to happen. And it needed to happen sooner. I mean, this was an Ottawa team with so much promise coming into this year. A lot of people, including myself, had them earmarked as a playoff team or a potential playoff buster. And I'm so disappointed by the play of the Ottawa Senators. And DJ Smith is at the forefront of that, and he is a scapegoat that needs to be casted off because of that. And ultimately, I actually think that this is directly responsible of DJ Smith's coaching this past year. I mean, you see so many times in Ottawa this season, the team plays down. What's the first thing that happens? Brady Tkachuk takes a major penalty. Brady Tkachuk takes a minor penalty. You're not going to win games by not having your best player on the ice. You need a coach that's going to, keep players responsible, keep things respectful, keep things, in check, keep players' heads in check. And if Ottawa can maybe somehow spark and turn around from that, all power to him. It's not impossible. Craig Berube turned around the St. Louis Blues in 2019 and helped them go to the Stanley Cup final and win the Stanley Cup. It's not impossible for Ottawa, but they have some insurmountable odds in front of them, and they have a really tough and stacked Atlantic division to try to climb at this point, and they're climbing out of the basement. So, Ottawa, best of luck. St. Louis, have fun being mid still. That's just my honest opinion. Tom, I'm going to let you talk about this next bit because this is kind of your pride and joy, especially when talking about like player development and fun stuff like that. It's World Juniors time, and it's always an exciting time of this year. And there's always different players to look out for on different teams. Who are some of your players to watch coming up in the World Juniors? Talk a little bit about the tournament, when it starts, where it's going to be held, all that fun stuff.
Sure. Tournament's going to start like it always does, day after Christmas, Boxing Day. It's going to be in Gothenburg, Sweden this year. Going to be played in 2 arenas here, Scandinavium, home to the Västra Frölunda, where Henrik Lundqvist played in the Swedish Elite League before he came over, and the Frölundaberg, which is a smaller arena, consisting of 10 teams like always. We have a new team in this year. Norway hasn't played in a few years, so they're in this year. They were promoted. So you have in Group A, Canada, Sweden, Finland, Germany, and Latvia. Group B, Czechia, United States, Slovakia, Switzerland, and Norway. The one guy that you're going to need to keep an eye on this year is Macklin Celebrini. He's a standout for Boston University, going to be playing for Canada. Interested to see what Canada does with him. He's still a 17-year-old kid. He hasn't been here yet. He doesn't have the experience as maybe some of the other players have. So it's going to be interesting to see. Canada has are no strangers to when they bring in younger kids to not play them as much, to play them a little bit less, to maybe play them on the fourth line. Give them limited shifts. They did it with Quentin Byfield years ago. They did it with Alexi Lafreniere the previous year. Even the year Connor McDavid was there, they kind of gave him limited minutes. So I'm curious to see what he does. Right now, he's over at Boston University, 10 goals, 15 assists, 25 points in 15 games. So he's another one. The guy who was supposed to go second overall, Cole Iserman, who's an American, the Americans didn't even take him. The team is so veteran heavy and deep that they decided to leave him home. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Time will tell. But it should be a good tournament, like always. Games will be from December 26th to New Year's Eve, like they always are. U.S. and Canada are not in the same group this year, as I previously alluded to. After that, they have the playoff round, quarterfinals January 2nd, semifinals January 4th. The final will be January 5th. And like I said, every year I look forward to this. Should be a good tournament. USA is bringing some players back from last year, like Rucker McGrody. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year. The U.S. will also have Rangers prospect and Boston College standout Gabe Perreault playing for them this year, who I'm curious to see how he plays in this. So all in all, should be a good tournament. And like I said, I look forward to it every year.
Yeah, Macklin Celebrini is definitely the biggest player to watch this year. He's going to be taking the Connor Bedard role pretty seriously here, but temporary.
But the thing is, I don't know about that because Bedard was in his last year of juniors. Macklin Celebrini is 17 years old. He's playing in the NCAA. The Canadians don't necessarily look at the NCAA with as highly as they do major juniors. It's gotten a little bit better over the years, but he's still a 17-year-old kid, and I feel like they did this with McDavid as well before he came into the league, and with Crosby.
And I completely agree, and that's why I was even going to say, temper expectations for those of you that are thinking Macklin Celebrini is going to be like the same level of talent as a Connor Bedard.
Yeah, very careful with 17-year-olds. The U.S. as well. The U.S. did it with Jack Hughes too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, any team that gets a chance to draft Macklin Celebrini is still going to be getting a fantastic player, but might not be at the same talent level as Connor Bedard.
They might be teammates next year. Who knows?
Could be teammates next year. And actually, that would be really exciting to watch if that's the case. And you could be getting a Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane situation all over again in Chicago if that's the case. But regardless, players for me to watch on the USA side of things, Rutger McGrody is definitely a player absolutely to watch this World Juniors. Cutter Gauthier as well, prospect of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's absolutely a player to watch in this particular tournament. I think this could be a very good coming out party for him. Also, University of Michigan standout and New Jersey Devils right-handed defensive prospect Seamus Casey is also going to be taking his spot at the top of the defense on the right-hand side for Team USA for the World Juniors this year. As for Devils fans, he is the only Devils prospect playing for Team USA in this tournament. He is absolutely a player to watch. He was teammates and line mates with Luke Hughes last year and the year before that, and could be a player that maybe in the next year could look to start making that jump to the AHL and NHL soon. So he's a player to watch, at least, albeit maybe a potential trade piece maybe going forward because of the current clog on the right-hand side for the New Jersey Devils. But those are my three players that I would say absolutely watch on the USA hockey side of things, and who I'm excited to watch in this upcoming tournament. But let us know down below which players that you're really excited to watch in the World Juniors tournament. All right, we got to blitz through the injury report. There's multiple injuries that I'm going to try to fly through and not give as much detail on, albeit maybe a few. Anaheim Ducks. John Gibson is out indefinitely due to the birth of his child, which is why he left Sunday night against the Devils abruptly. It wasn't for illness. It was because his baby was about to be born. So congratulations to John Gibson. Mason McTavish, leading scorer of the Anaheim Ducks, is out indefinitely with an upper body injury. There is no timetable yet for his return. The Arizona Coyotes, Sean Durzi is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. No timetable for his return. Travis Boyd is going to be out for the season with a torn pectoral muscle. Barrett Hayton is also going to be out indefinitely. He's slated right now as an early February return. He's dealing with an upper body injury at the moment. Boston Bruins, Derek Forbort, out indefinitely with a lower body injury. No timetable. Buffalo Sabres, Jeff Skinner and Jordan Greenway are both out until early January with an upper body injury, respectively. And Zemgus Girgensson is also out until early January with a lower body injury. Calgary Flames, really nothing new to report. Walker Duehr is currently out indefinitely with flu-like symptoms and has been out since December 14th. So hopefully he's getting better from that. Chicago Blackhawks, trying to make sure I'm getting this one right on this one. Yeah, making sure. Okay, Joey Anderson is out indefinitely with an upper body injury and no timetable for his return. Philip Kurashev is a questionable for Friday night. He is out with an illness. He was out his last game with an illness. Same thing also for questionable to report. Alex Vlasic is also questionable for Friday night. He has been out with an upper body injury. Out indefinitely, however, Seth Jones. He currently is dealing with a shoulder injury. No timetable for his return. Colorado Avalanche, Cale Makar is questionable Thursday night with a lower body injury. Andrew Cogliano is also questionable for, I'm sorry, not Tuesday night, for Thursday night for both players. He is questionable Thursday night for an undisclosed injury, which also kept him out of last game as well. And Arturi Lehkonen is slated for a late January return to action. He has been dealing with a neck injury as well. To the Columbus Blue Jackets, Jack Roslovic will be out until early January with an ankle injury, but out until late January is Patrick Laine with a shoulder injury. Also out until late January is Boone Jenner, who's also dealing with a jaw injury. More than likely, I think actually probably a broken jaw. Adam Boqvist is also an early January return right now with a shoulder injury. Quite a few injuries for Columbus. For Dallas, Jake Ottinger, starting goaltender Jake Ottinger, is out indefinitely with a lower body injury, and you hate to see it for Dallas, especially because they need to try to stay at near the top of the standings in the Central Division, and Colorado's right there, ready to really pull ahead in the Central Division. Detroit Red Wings, Ville Husso, starting goaltender Ville Husso, not only out indefinitely with a lower body injury, it's looking like that Ville Husso could actually be done for the season, in fact. And there could be signs of that because the Detroit Red Wings, as of yesterday, have signed Michael Hutchinson to an NHL contract. So we'll see about this one.
Losing
Alex
1-0 as of right now, the Red Wings.
Huh?
Losing 1-0 right now, the Red Wings.
You hate to see it, especially because also they're missing Alex Lyon, their other 1B goaltender. He's out indefinitely with a lower body injury as well. Also out indefinitely is Klim Kostin with an upper body injury. David Perron is eligible Friday to return from suspension. He was suspended he was serving a 6-game suspension for cross-checking against the Philadelphia Flyers. Moving on down to the Edmonton Oilers. Dylan Holloway is an early January return due to a knee injury. I skipped a little bit there. To the Florida Panthers, Anton Lundell is out indefinitely with an illness and not known for when he's going to return from that. LA Kings, Phoenix Copley is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Vladislav Gavrikov is also out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Still no word on Victor Arvidsson and his back injury. He's still currently month to month since the month of October with that back injury. Still yet to make his NHL debut this season, rather his season debut. Minnesota Wild, Matt Zuccarello is out indefinitely with a upper body injury, and Jared Spurgeon is questionable Thursday night with a lower body injury. He missed his last game with that lower body injury. Jonas Brodin is also out indefinitely with an upper body injury. To the Montreal Canadiens, Josh Harris is an early January return from lower body injury. Out indefinitely, though, is Tanner Pearson with an upper body injury. Poor guy just cannot catch a break at all. Nashville Predators, there's one to report. Kiefer Sherwood is questionable Thursday night with an upper body injury. Nothing new to report for New Jersey Devils here. New York Islanders, Julian Gauthier is questionable Saturday night with an undisclosed injury. Also questionable Saturday night with an upper body injury is Matt Martin. But out indefinitely, however, with an upper body injury is Scott Mayfield. So the New York Islanders are dealing with some significant injuries on the defensive front, but picking up the pieces is Noah Dobson, who has been one of the best defensemen in the NHL recently. Holy moly. Nothing new to report also for the New York Rangers. Moving down to the Ottawa Senators, Matthew Joseph is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. And Thomas Chabot is an early January return from his lower body injury. Eligible January 21st, one thing to keep in mind for the Ottawa Senators. Eligible to return on January 21st is Shane Pinto, but it'll be interesting to see if that contract is even ready to go by the time he's ready to come off of suspension. Philadelphia Flyers, Carter Hart is questionable Thursday night with an illness. That's why he also did not play Tuesday night against the New Jersey Devils. Noah Cates is a late January return with a foot injury as well. Pittsburgh Penguins, Brandon Rust is out indefinitely with an upper body injury. San Jose Sharks, an early January return slated at the moment for both Logan Couture and Ryan Carpenter. Both have been dealing with a lower body and undisclosed injury, respectively. More injuries to discuss here for the San Jose Sharks. Cole Addison is questionable Thursday night with a lower body injury. Also questionable Thursday night is Jan Ruta due to illness. Nico Sturm is out indefinitely with an abdominal injury, and Matt Benning is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Down to the Seattle Kraken, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare is an early January return from a lower body injury. Questionable Wednesday night to suit up for the Seattle Kraken is Jared McCann with a lower body injury. Sorry, I just lost my spot. Justin Schultz is out indefinitely at the moment with an upper body injury. And Andre Burakovsky is also out indefinitely with an upper body injury, as well as Philip Grubauer out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Moving on down to the Tampa Bay Lightning, questionable for Thursday night is Mikhail Sergachev. He's currently dealing with a lower body injury as well. To the Toronto Maple Leafs, Justin Wohl is out indefinitely with an ankle injury, and Mark Giordano is out indefinitely with a broken finger. Ryan Reeves is out indefinitely with a leg injury too, but that's probably not going to affect things too much for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's just be real. Nothing new to report for the Vancouver Canucks. For the Vegas Golden Knights, Aiden Hill is an early January return from his lower body injury. Keegan Colasar is questionable Thursday night with an undisclosed injury. And nothing else new to report there for the Vegas Golden Knights. For the Washington Capitals, TJ Oshie is an early January return from a lower body injury, and Max Pacioretty is also an early January return from his Achilles injury. Sonny Milano is out indefinitely with an upper body injury. And lastly, to the Winnipeg Jets, Rasmus Kupari is an early January return from shoulder injury, and Kyle Connor is a mid-February return, currently dealing with a knee injury, and that's a huge blow to a potent Winnipeg lineup, if you ask me. So we just blitzed through a lot. There was a lot to unpack there, and discuss down in the comment section below what you think of these injuries and who should be worried and who should be hyped for players coming back. But speaking of being worried, we got to talk why we're worried. Some teams that are doing well at the moment and really riding high, and teams that maybe we should start worrying about at the moment. Tom, I'm going to let you take over on this one. Who's wow? Who's worrisome?
Well, the wow week for me, I mean, Rangers are doing it again. After 2 stinkers last week, they get blown out. They come back and win 3 in a row. And the concerns were there, especially after the game against the Maple Leafs Tuesday night with Igor. Igor, it was a bad game, a 7-3 loss. We figured that was it. They put Jonathan Quick in Friday night against the Ducks. They had a bad start, but came back to win it 5-1. But what made me happier was Saturday night against the Bruins. The 2-1 win. They were down 1-0. And I'm going to be honest with you. I would have been okay if they walked out of there with a 1-0 loss, or they walked out of there with 2 in overtime loss. They won 2-1 in overtime. Same thing last night against the Maple Leafs. The Leafs figured that they were going to, especially some Leaf fans I saw talking, figured they were just going to blow us out again. Rangers went out, won 5-2 last night. And that was it for the Leafs. But I love the play of Igor Shesterkin as of his last 2 games, not even as of late. Playing great, 3 in a row. Lafreniere got on the board last night. Zibanejad starting to score again. Panarin, well as Panarin. They're finding their groove again after not having it for a couple of games last week. Those couple losses there were worrying me, but they came right back and got it done, especially the loss against Toronto. But 3 in a row. I'm going to get away from them. Vegas Golden Knights, 7-2-1 in the last 10 after faltering. But the thing about the Vegas Golden Knights is this. The Vancouver Canucks are right behind them right now. Also 7-2-1, and only 1 point separates them. Everybody thought the Canucks would cool off. They're not cooling off. The Canucks are not going anywhere. I think the Canucks are going to make the playoffs. And this is one that I hate to say, but hats off to the Philadelphia Flyers. Another 7-2-1 in their last 10. Right now, they're second in the Metro, a little bit behind the Rangers, but still. The Flyers are really surprising a lot of people this year, including myself. I figured that they'd be down, towards the bottom of the division, towards the bottom of the conference, maybe be in the Celebrini conversation. They're not. 39 points right now, second in the Metro, holding down a playoff spot, would have home ice if it ended today. I don't know if it's going to stay that way, but hats off to the Flyers. They're playing a lot better than I thought they would have played. Now, some cause for concern here. Well, this is an obvious one. Detroit Red Wings. We thought that this team guaranteed playoff spot here. Guaranteed top 3 in the Atlantic at one point. They've fallen out not only of that top 3, but of the wild card as well. Dylan Larkin came back against the Ducks. Don't know if it really did anything. Now there are 2 goalies in Ville Husso, who's probably done for the season, and Alex Lyon are out. They've lost 3 in a row. Patrick Kane, who everyone said, it's going to be rejuvenated, he's going to be fine. 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points in 7 games. I don't know if that's going to be enough. Maybe if it were 5 or 6 points in 7 games, it'd be a little bit better. Has it been Kane? Has it been the goalie issues? I don't really know, but they better figure it out, because if not, they're going to have a lot of trouble come the deadline time. If Kane keeps playing the way he's playing, Nobody's going to want him. Red Wings aren't going to be able to trade him. If they do trade him, they're not going to get a return back. And guess what? He's not going to stay there if they miss the playoffs. He's either going to, A, go to a contender if he thinks he has it in him again, or B, he's going to do the age-old prediction. Go home to Buffalo, play one last season there, come out, wave to his hometown fans, and call it a career and sail off into the sunset as the greatest American hockey player who ever played. Another lesser one here is a team that I brought up before, Colorado Avalanche. 4-5-1 in their last 10. Obviously, they dumped Thomas Tatar. They're trying to make a bigger move. Whether that move is Nazem Kadri, whether that move is Elias Lindholm. I meant to say earlier, Ryan Johansson has now been playing third-line center, and Ross Colton's been playing the second-line center there in Colorado. Hate to say it, as good as they are, they're not going to win a Stanley Cup doing that. So we'll see. They lost to Chicago last night. There's still a lot of time for them to figure it out. The entire top three in the Central with them, Dallas, and Winnipeg right now is jumbled. None of those teams are playing particularly well at the moment. So I think that they're not so much cause for worry, but if they do want to go deep, they have to figure it out.
Yeah, I hate to say it, I have to agree with you on the Rangers assessment. Far and away, they are the best team in the NHL right now. And I mean, talk about a team that's really come alive as of late. I mean, you even see Alexis Lafreniere starting to, realize his potential and why he was a number one overall pick as well. And you love to see it. It's a long season, and the Metropolitan Division may be the strongest division in hockey this year. You got a lot of teams that are going to be vying for position within the Metropolitan Division, and there are still a lot of teams that are still pretty close. A team that might not feel like they're close at the moment, but realistically speaking, they're really close to the top three, the New Jersey Devils. And that's all in part to, winning 7 of their last 10 games. Now, sure, their last 2 games have been a bit of a stinker. Last night was pretty controversial against the Philadelphia Flyers, losing in overtime. A crucial missed tripping call on Jack Hughes towards the beginning of overtime, but a really costly turnover as well by Jack Hughes to give Philadelphia the game-winning goal as well. And you hate to see that. And also the major loss against the Anaheim Ducks Sunday night. It certainly sent some Devils fans into a bit of a frenzy. Then again, Lindy Ruff can breathe wrong at the moment, and it sends Devils fans into a frenzy, quite frankly. But I think the Devils are close to kind of really starting to come back up into the division standings. And I'll really be interested to see what they end up doing with this newfound cap space with Dougie Hamilton landing on IR. There's some early projections saying that he might not be back until playoff time, maybe a mid-April, early May return. So the Devils need to do their part, get to the playoffs, so that way they can get Dougie back and healthy, and they can really kind of use the extra cap space to their advantage. And I'll be interested to see what they end up picking up, whether it's a veteran shutdown defenseman or maybe even a goaltender. And there have been a lot of rumors swirling about John Gibson. And I don't know, after how he played in the first 2 periods of the Devils game on Sunday night, might not be the worst idea in the entire world, but that contract is a bit of an albatross. So I don't know about that. But teams I would be a little bit concerned about, I got to say it, Pittsburgh Penguins should be a little bit concerned at this point. They're struggling to find their way out of the basement of the Metropolitan Division. And there's some pretty interesting rumors going around. Interesting meaning I don't know how much I buy them, that they could be open to trading Erik Karlsson come trade deadline time, which I don't know if they're going to really realistically be able to do. But is there already buyer's remorse there for the Pittsburgh Penguins with Erik Karlsson? Could it finally be time for Pittsburgh to consider trading off some assets to try and get younger? Who knows? There could also be a little bit concern right now for the Carolina Hurricane at the moment. They just sent down Antti Raanta after an abysmal start to his season. He's now playing down with the Chicago Wolves. And Freddie Anderson is still on the mend. So they're still doing well with Kochetkov in net, and he's certainly holding his own and keeping Carolina in the hunt. But they're not really that big firepower top 3 team in the Metropolitan Division that we've really been expecting so far. So I'll be curious to see, with a little bit of cap space that they have, are they possibly going to leverage for a trade? maybe go and get a Patrick Kane if you really want it for the right-hand side and see if that gives a boost to their lineup come trade deadline time. Who knows? We'll check on them in the new year, though. I'll be curious to see where they're at in the standings once we get to the All-Star break. All right, time to move on from this. Time to wrap up our episode. It's time to talk about some players doing amazing things over the last 2 weeks. Let's talk high performance.
Your I-80 Sports High Performance Players of the Week.
All right, Tom, who are your players of the week that you want to highlight?
Well, no homer alerts this week because I think everybody right now on the Rangers is doing what they need to do. So I'm not going to even put any Rangers in here. I'm going to go with an old reliable here. Nathan McKinnon, 11 points in his last 5 games played, despite the struggles up in Colorado. He really is holding up his end of the bargain. Surprise, surprise, I'm actually going to put a goalie in here. Normally don't do it very often, and it's not going to be Igor Shesterkin. Despite the way he's played over his last 2 games, it's still got to be a little more from him. But I'm going to go with Thatcher Demko up there in Vancouver, 4-1 in his last 5 games, and another huge, huge part of what the Canucks are doing and why they're doing so well this year. And, well, I'm going to put a guy who's kind of put a dagger in my team last Tuesday and a little bit last night, even though they won. Going up with Austin Matthews up there in Toronto. 8 goals in his last 5 games played. Right now, he's on pace for 73 goals if the stats were to pan out right. I don't think he's going to get that, but could I see him topping 60 again? I think that's possible. I definitely think that's possible. So Austin Matthews up for the Leafs. Leafs are finally showing some signs of life, except for going down 5-0, scoring 5 goals and still losing a game. So they're still kind of the same old Leafs. Who knows? But hats off to Austin Matthews.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, Austin Matthews could very well be in that conversation for 60 goals again this season, and you'll have to see that in back-to-back seasons. I'm going to mention a few players right now that currently play for the same team. No, I'm not talking about Tampa Bay Lightning players. No, I'm not talking about Edmonton Oilers players. I'm surprisingly talking about New York Islanders players here, which I never thought I'd see the day where Islanders players are doing non-Islanders things, scoring goals, putting points up. And let's just highlight this right now. Bo Horvat, 11 points in his last 7 games. In that span of time, 6 goals, 5 assists. His line mate, Matthew Barzal, is also doing great things as well. 10 points in his last 7, 3 goals and 7 assists. And what more could be said about the really amazing play as of late for Noah Dobson for the New York Islanders? 11 assists in his last 7 games. He has really been, helping the transitional game for the New York Islanders, and it's really kind of helping them, gain some momentum here in the Metropolitan Division. And one of the biggest reasons why the Metropolitan Division is as strong as it currently is. Also should be mentioned that Noah Dobson is an absolute warrior in these last 7 games. He is averaging right now over 27 minutes of ice time a night in those 7 games, which the reliance on the 23-year-old defenseman is nothing short of remarkable. And Noah Dobson could very well be in the Norris talk come the end of the season, which I honestly didn't have pegged, but he's got the talent level to do it. Also want to highlight here Mark Stone for the Vegas Golden Knights, 12 points in his last 7 as well as Edmonton Oilers doing Edmonton Oilers things. 12 points in his last 7 for Connor McDavid, and 11 points in his last 7 games for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Had to mention those. I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't. And also defenseman doing point things for Edmonton. Evan Bouchard, 10 in his last 7 as well. So, yeah, been an exciting last few weeks of hockey here, got to say. But as we round things out, we got to talk our question of the day, which we talked a little bit about the Detroit Red Wings before. And with how worried we're currently looking about the Detroit Red Wings with the goalie issues and, difficulty really getting traction into the Atlantic Division. Tom, I'll ask you here. Do you think that the Detroit Red Wings are going to be buyers or sellers once we get to the NHL trade deadline in February?
Well, the way it's looking right now, who could they sell? They're not going to sell Larkin. You're not going to trade DeBrincat. You're definitely not going to trade Mo Seider. And I mentioned my concerns with Patrick Kane earlier. If he stays on the pace that he's at, who's going to take him? I think that, last year everyone says with the Rangers, oh, it was just a fluke. His hip was hurt and whatever. The hip is fixed now. The hip is fixed. And if he is trending the way he's trending, no team's going to want to give up all too much for him. And like I mentioned above, if they do trade him, they're going to get hosed on the trade. So is it going to come to a point with him where they're going to say, well, we'll lose him for nothing in the summer. We'll take anything for him or not. But at the same time, who are they going to sell it? If they're buyers, who are they going to buy? That's the other problem. I don't think they're going to be cup contenders right now. I don't. So I don't really know. I don't know. I think they might just have to stay with what they have right now.
They might need to stay with what they have, but they do have a few interesting players that could be sold if they really want to, if they certainly do desire. There's the obvious player for the Detroit Red Wings that you can sell off in Patrick Kane. That's the most obvious one, the most recent acquisition. He's a UFA at the end of this season. He only signed a 1-year deal. He could be a player they could look to trade. Another player that they could look to trade is former Stanley Cup champion David Perron, who's on the last year of his $4.75 million contract as well. And you're going to need to find some cap space at the end of this season because you're going to owe some money to a few players. You're going to owe some money to Michael Rasmussen. You're going to owe some money to Lucas Raymond. You're probably also going to need some money for Joe Veleno if you want to give him a pay raise as well as Moritz Seider. So you've got some really interesting names that they're going to need to try to, gain some cap space for, even with the $4 million in added cap space that could potentially be coming to the NHL next year. There's still some interesting players you could cast off. Pending UFAs, David Perron, Patrick Kane, Daniel Sprong, Christian Fischer, Shane Gostisbehere, James Reimer, all players that are UFA at the end of this season. So those are all players that I think come trade deadline time, maybe you could have a team that could be looking in their direction at a few of these players, more specifically Patrick Kane and David Perron for playoff experience and maybe to give the old playoff boost that some players need. But if you ask me, are the Detroit Red Wings going to be buyers or are they going to be sellers? Given the injuries and everything going on right now, I hate to say it, I think they're going to be sellers, and I think they're going to be conservative sellers in the sense that they're not going to completely tear things down. This is a team that I think is going to be set up for major success over the next 2 or 3 years, but it will not hurt to cast a few of these players off, gain some cap room, make some long-term deals to the players I mentioned before, and Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond specifically, and really start building around both of them. And Steve Yzerman has already been doing that. But I think if you ask me today, I will conservatively say that they will be conservative sellers. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? You got to let us know in the comments section down below. Hit us up. Hit the like button if you like our content. And make sure you subscribe down below as well. YouTube.com/i80sports. And hit the bell notifications. That way you guys know when our content goes live. If you guys are on X, make sure you follow us down below at i80_sports NHL. And if you follow us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value it. But time to stop hearing us talk. It's time to watch more hockey. And it's also time to celebrate the holiday season. And to whatever you celebrate and to whoever you celebrate with, we wish all of you at home a happy and healthy and safe holiday season to all, and to all a good night from us. But just like that, I'm Brian. He's Tom. I got the direction right. This has been our holiday edition episode of NHL on i80 Sports.